Well, hi, everybody. I hope you're out there doing well, staying healthy, keeping warm with the lights on. And if not, then I hope that eventually or quickly that situation is going to change for you. I have a little shameless self-promotion going on here over my face. Hang on and let me get rid of it. But it does refer to the fact that I do have some new classes open for registration. Hi there. And we're going to be escaping to Venice in the month of March. And it would be so nice to have you along for the trip. I hope you're doing well today. If you are, I would love to see your comments, and if you give permission to eCam to do so, to allow your name to be viewed, then I'll be able to see your comments and we can add them to the broadcast as well. Birgit, hi. So nice to have you with me today. And I am here with just some quick tips on what to do to help preserve white and light value in your watercolors. It's white and light can be a demon because it just can't in watercolor. It's one of the real challenges. And if you're out there and you have ever used masking fluid, can you just tell me? Can you say, yes, I have used it? And when you do, tell me, do you like using it? Is it something that works well for you? If you're like me, it's not your favorite tool for preserving white. And you might wonder, well, why is that? First of all, you might also wonder, what is masking fluid? Masking fluid is like rubber cement, and it's something that you can paint onto your paper. And my favorite brand of this is something called Pebeo Drawing Gum. Hi, Dick. Hi, Marilyn. Hey, Jenny. And also Delane, hello. So nice to have you all here for today. But if you've ever used masking fluid, tell me, if you would, what your difficulties with it are. And I see Dick has used it, and I'm sure that a number of you actually have. Is it something that you feel works well for you? I have a real love-hate relationship with masking fluid. And the reason for that is that when you use masking fluid, you're obligated to use it on dry paper. And if you are anything like me, that dry paper is always a cause for harsh edges. And those harsh edges, those sharp edges, as Delane commented, require softening afterward. And Dick likes to use it when he has several washes to do, and I think that that can be a very valid time to use it. There are a number of tips and tricks that you can use masking fluid for, but I really don't want to talk too much about it today because this is something that's out there that everybody uses, and it's not so unusual. Maybe I'll do a live on that at some point, but always be thinking that you need to soften edges after you use it. And I'll just give you a quick comparison with masking fluid with what I plan to demonstrate today. Instead, what I hope to demonstrate for you now is a couple of unusual things, that I use to preserve light and white. And one of them is a method that I know that a real legend in the watercolor world, a historical legend in the world of watercolor, John Singer Sargent, used in his watercolors. And even though he was often painting on location, and even though he was in an era before masking fluid was manufactured so readily available, he had a trick that he would use to preserve watercolor white and light value. He also used it to impart texture, and that was a piece of candle wax. Now, I don't use candle wax. I use a Crayola white crayon. And if you look in the comments, you'll see a link to a box of 5 little white crayons, I think. And it's available on Amazon, and this is a really nice little tool. Also, if you've never heard of it, Derwent makes a China marker, and that's another little tool that I want to talk to you about. This is a wax pencil of sorts, and so we're really borrowing with both of these on the fact that wax and watercolor do not mix. Wax and water do not mix. Wax causes water to bead up on the surface. So I'm going to demonstrate for you how these work and what kind of marks you can think about making with them. But I also want to introduce to you a third item that may or may not be in your experience, or you may not even know about it. Some of you who've been studying with me have heard about it maybe, but I want to just kind of dig in a little bit more, and that is something called watercolor medium, or gum arabic. Gum arabic's been around for a long time, and it's actually what is mixed with watercolor pigment in order to create the ooey gooey stuff that goes into the tubes. All of the pigments that we use in all of the mediums of watercolor are the same, whether you're an oil painter or a pastel painter or an acrylic painter, a watercolor painter. All of the pigments are the same. They are, especially if they're artist grade, they're going to be, we're going to be drawing from the same well of ground up matter or chemical matter. It's just a matter of what you mix it with that determines the medium that it becomes. And hi, Beth. Nice to see you. Glad that you were able to tune in today from Greenville. So when and where you paint in watercolor, gum arabic is mixed with those pigments to create watercolor. If you're using acrylic paint, it is an acrylic polymer that gets mixed with those pigments to create acrylic paint. And in oil paint, you can kind of guess, you take those same pigments and you mix them with oil, and you've got oil paint. So we're all sort of using the same pigments. It's just a matter of whatever it is that our paint is dissolved in. And so gum arabic is interestingly something that we can think about utilizing as a resist on the surface too. So I want to kind of show you a little bit about that. Now, let's see. I guess what I'll do is I will switch to my tabletop then and show you how we might use these 3 items. Oh my goodness, I guess it's my mom's birthday tomorrow and you're all getting the heads up. Got to get rid of that notification. Okay. Hey, Cheryl, nice to see you. Okay, so this is my tabletop here, and I've got just a little scrap piece of paper here that I'm going to do our demonstration on. And first of all, I'm just going to make a little mark with this masking fluid just as a comparison for you of what kind of mark we would get in in contrast to the methods I'm going to be showing you. So I'm just going to dip in here and I'm going to just make a few marks with some of the masking fluid, and then you'll get an idea of what that would look like. I'll let that dry. You always want to put that on dry paper, and you would never want to paint on it until it is absolutely dry. So that is something you kind of have to do in advance. And these methods also are ones that you might want to do in advance. This is the crayon, the white crayon, and I've just kind of sharpened it a little bit so that the tip is a little bit finer. And this is kind of a fun way to sort of impart texture. And I noticed in the work of Singer Sargent, when I saw it in person, when he would try to say rocks or a wall that might be stucco and have a little bit of texture to it, he would often use a white piece of wax, or in this instance, this is just a white crayon. I'm going to also just write something here. And so you'll get a sense of how that can work. This is a white China marker. Now these guys have been around for a long time, and they can write on glass, and they have other uses too, but for this purpose, it's very similar in its mark making. I'm going to just kind of say texture here, and then I'll also write another word here. And we'll paint over that, and you'll get to see what kind of a resist it is. I find that of the two, this leaves a whiter mark, this China marker, and I think it's because it might have a little bit of oil in the mix with the wax. It's not just pure wax. This is more transparent and will show through a little bit more of the color, and we'll just sort of test that theory down here. I'll just write with the wax crayon here, and then this will be with the China marker. And we'll just see how that sets up. Okay, so we've got these two here, and I'm going to show you a third. And this is the Cheap Joe's version of the gum arabic solution. Lifting preparation by Winsor Newton also contains the gum arabic. Basically, it's really any of the watercolor mediums that might have gum arabic as their primary ingredient, and you can just look on the ingredients. But Cheap Joe's version is called watercolor medium. This can also be used in your palette. Like, let's say you have kind of a dried up color that doesn't really want to rehydrate easily. If you put a couple of drops of gum arabic or the solution into the well, and then agitate it and bring a lot of water into that well, you might be able to help keep it a little bit more hydrated a little bit longer. So just a thought that there is some versatility to this beyond what I'm showing you today. So this watercolor medium is it's kind of a honey-like consistency. And what I have found that we can do with it is, if we put it on the paper before we paint, we have the ability to lift more easily. And so this creates kind of a nice soft light. When lights are lifted, let's put it this way, they just looked a little softer. They're not quite as harsh and obvious. And I'll write with this too, and we'll get a sense of how this might work. And I'll just say lift, prep here with my brush. Okay. This isn't necessarily going to create as dramatic a resist unless you put it on quite thickly. But I would suggest that you put it on and then let it dry before you paint on it. So we're going to let that dry while we kind of test out these other mediums. It's kind of a little mad science moment here today. Has anybody used either the crayon or the wax pencil, the China marker, or even the lifting preparation? Have any of you out there had any experience with these, and have you enjoyed using them? That might be kind of a fun thing to have going on conversationally while this live presentation goes on. Hello, Jane. It's nice to see you. I'm glad to know you're out there, and Mary Alice, it's so nice to have you here as well. Okay, so let's just do this masking fluid. We'll paint over it just so that we get a chance to see what it can do. And I'm just going to put some dark color over it. And you'll see that even though this masking fluid is gray, it does throw up light when and where I paint over it. And so you can sometimes tell where you can find it while you're painting. But it is, if you use a clear masking fluid, sometimes it's hard to keep track of where that clear masking fluid is. And so I tend to like this masking fluid that has just a little bit of color in it, and it kind of helps me keep track of where it might still be. So next to this, if you'll recall, was our crayon, I believe, and I'm just going to roughly come over this, and you'll see that, oh wow, look at that. The kind of resist that it provides does seem to allow for paint to go down into the divots of the paper. And so this really does tend to impart a little bit more texture. And I'll bring it up close here so that you can kind of see. There's little spots of color in there that are being caught by the paper. And so, if you want a real clean mark, this wax might not be the one that you want to use. I'm just going to soften this connection there. Okay, now coming down here where I wrote something, I wrote resist, and you can see that it already just quickly shows up. And how fun is that to just have a little bit of something on the paper, and it's so easy. Definitely, if you want to do something easy on a card or in your journal, this could be a fun way to put some lettering into your work, maybe a little bit of a message into your work, and yet not be painting it. You would simply be using the wax to create a negative image of whatever it is that you wanted to say in terms of words. Now, all right, so let's come up here and let's do a little bit more with, this is the grease pencil or the China marker. And my experience has been is that this just seems to be lighter and brighter, and if I come over top of it, I almost can get a brighter white just by lifting off the surface, even if I'm using a staining pigment. I can't necessarily do that quite as readily with the white crayon. It's just a little stronger resist, subtly so, but a little bit stronger. Now, both of these might, especially this grease pencil, this China marker, I think this would definitely put you in the realm of mixed media. Should you use it? that's not really a problem for me because I'm not a purist. If you know me well, or even if you're just getting to know me, you can know that being a purist is never a goal for me. So let's see. Let's take a look at the comments. Linda Noblin says that she's used a crayon, and Beth says she's only used the crayon and masking fluid in my classes, which kind of makes sense because I do talk about using these methods. One thing to remember, and Dick makes this point, is that both of these, both the wax and the grease pencil, the China marker, both of them are permanently on your painting. Once they're added, you cannot remove them. So, if you are making marks with them, definitely keep this in mind when you are making your marks, because you don't want to just put a mark and then have to live with something that you're not really happy about. So be careful as you make your marks with these mediums, but as you can see, they do a nice job of providing a resist that is somewhat interesting. It's a little bit more varied than you'll see that the masking fluid can be. I'm also going to come down here and show you what can happen when you use these on top of another layer of paint. Now, Dick uses this frequently, as do I, with masking fluid when and where he wants to mask out something. But this is a little bit more subtle. This is going to create a light mark even on top of the previous layer of paint. So if you don't want that light mark, if you simply want the color underneath to shine through, then masking fluid might be the better choice. But if you want to sort of lighten and brighten something up, you could create a little bit of lightness. It's subtle. A little bit of lightness and a little bit of resist for future layers. Anyway, this is the China marker, and that is the wax crayon. So we'll take a look at those when they dry, and we'll compare apples to apples a little bit more. Okay, so now we're going to check out the lifting prep and see what it can do for us, or the watercolor medium. This is a staining color that I'm using, and so I'm going to just come over top of this and paint over this, and you'll see it doesn't really provide a resist so much as it just is underneath. And the goal then can be to lift back to the mark that you want to make. So we'll see how that works. Here we go. I'm going to just go over top of this lifting preparation to see if I can get it to show the words just with that thick application and not so much. It doesn't really show the words so much, but we'll see what happens as it dries. Remember, I spelled out some words there. And so we'll just let that dry, and then we'll test out what it allows us to do on the surface. While that dries, I'm going to go back to the masking fluid, and I'm going to show you the type of mark that makes in comparison to the others. So this is now dry. Sometimes when you mask in a large area, I like to lift off the pigment that's on the surface before I take it off with my masking fluid eraser. And the reason for that is that sometimes that pigment that sits on the surface can sort of roll into the white area that you're trying to preserve. So I'm going to just take this off. And you can see that it's leaving some bright white here. And some quite hard edges. Very hard, in fact. Those edges are really sharp, and that is sometimes a real demon. Jeanette, welcome. Virginia, welcome. Nice to see you've joined us. So what I have to do if I want to soften those edges is I have to spend time with a brush, coming in here and just taking the time to soften if I want that edge to be something other than hard and harsh. And you know, this is something that sometimes we forget to do, but it makes such a difference when we take that time to do some softening. It also takes a lot of time. So you may or may not want to be involved in that. And you can see the difference in the edge between where I've softened and where it's bright and sharp. So I leave it to you to decide if that's something that you want to deal with and use. But these others, you can see, have a much different quality to the way in which they preserve the light and the white. It's much more textured. It's lighter and brighter. If I were to come over here to where the lifting preparation is, I think you'll find that even though it's a staining color, let me see here, that I would be able to lift off some lines pretty easily. And you'll see that the quality of that light that I'm capable of lifting is a lot softer than this masked white. And so, you know, I like a variation in my whites, just like I like a variation in my colors. And so be thinking about, do you want a harsh edge, a bright light? Do you want mottled light with texture, or do you want soft light? And if you feel like you would want, you know, this soft light quality, you might want to think about putting a little lifting preparation on your paper surface. You'll see that it even provided just a slight, subtle, I said lift prep here underneath the paint. And I think that it's even just showing through that first wash. If you don't do a lot of agitation, you might even be able to get a subtle ghostly resist with that lifting preparation. And if it doesn't give you enough, you can come in here and you can lift out whatever didn't really resist the way you wanted it to. And it's very easy, even when it's a staining color. So these are just a few ideas for you to think about utilizing. If you want to preserve your lights or lift back your lights, or in any way just kind of create a little bit of resist on the surface. I'm wondering if you might have any questions about any of this that I've showed you here today, because that's kind of the bulk of what I wanted to show you. I I'm really excited about my new classes that are coming up. I hope that you'll think about signing up and escaping to beautiful Venice with us. We're going to be painting a wonderful balcony. I'm really looking forward to that. And I think, is this my, oh, there it is. Those are a couple of the images that we'll be using. The balcony and a colorful village in the confines of the area of Venice that is known as Burano. And so we'll be painting boats, and we'll be painting the balcony and foliage, and learning a little bit about perspective, 1 and 2 point perspective. So some pretty fundamental basics, and I hope that you'll think about joining us. Registration is now open, and if you go to store.rebeccazartist.com, you'll be able to register. And one of the cool new things about this set of classes is that you're going to have lifetime access to the recordings, and everything's going to be housed on one platform so that you won't have to save emails and refer back to video links like we have been doing. Let's see, I'm going to look at some of these questions. Ginny, did you use the straight gum Arabic or the American Journey watercolor medium on the far right? For that, I used the American Journey watercolor medium. But that and the lifting preparation both have gum Arabic as their primary ingredient. So both should work pretty well for that. Birgit says that would you ever use other colors of crayon, or is that cheating? No, I think you could use other colors of crayon. And in fact, these China markers come in colors too. And if you really want to just continue on down that line, oil pastels are another way to think about creating beautifully colorful watercolor resists. So that's a really good question. And, your imagination is your only limit, right? So definitely take these and play with them, and think about using them as resist mediums for yourself. I think this, Beth said that the new platform sounds wonderful, and I'm really hoping, my assistant and I have been really trying to think, how can we make things better in our classes? And I know that I feel as if it's been a little bit challenging to sign up in one place and then wait for the email from another place and then save that email so that you can go to YouTube to watch the recording of the class. And it's all been possible, but I feel like this new platform is going to allow you to find your materials, your sign up, previous classes that you might have taken with me, and all the recordings for those previous classes, and have it all be in one place. And so that just seems like it's hopefully going to be the ticket to improving things. And we're always looking to get better, right? All of us are hopefully trying to become better at what we do and what we offer. I'm hopeful that this new technique for you has just been enlightening, maybe thought-provoking, maybe get the juices flowing so that you can take this in your own creative direction. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I'll have another Friday freebie for you at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but I'm hoping that we'll have something fun to talk about. Jenny, thanks for your sweet comment, and I'm more than happy to share everything I know. It's fun to bring you guys along for the fun, and thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of my world. Take care and have a good week.